9 facts about the solar system. Amazing and interesting event. Especially the fourth one. 9th. If sound waves could travel in the vacuum of space, what will we hear? First, we know sound is vibration in a physical medium, so it can't propagate in a vacuum. In a vacuum, the gloss is different. We know all about electromagnetic radiation, including light, can be interpreted as vibrations of electromagnetic fields, or extremely fast. They are massless, so photons don't need matter to travel. The speed of light in a vacuum is 300,000 kilometers per second. A slight decrease in the atmosphere, down to 200,000 kilometers per second when passing through the glass. But if sound waves could travel through space, solar activity alone is enough to drive us crazy. The sound he produces will be more than 100 times stronger, conveyed to us. It's like a car horn in meditation right next to you. Astronomers record the sun's boost waves came to this conclusion. These records, from careful monitoring of the motion of the sun's surface, the energy released per second is equivalent to 100 trillion. Hydrogen bomb. If for some reason the sun suddenly disappeared, the light only lasts 8 minutes. But we've been hearing voices for over 13 years. It's just the speed at which sound travels, more than 1 million times slower than the speed of light. 8th. Natural satellites of 2 planets in the solar system. In the most common sense of the term, it's a celestial object. It orbits a larger celestial body, whether it is a planet, dwarf planet or asteroid, in the solar system. Usually the mass ratio between primary and secondary celestial bodies. This ratio is very high among planets. A planet is usually more powerful than any of its moons. Pluto system. Thousands of times heavier. This is why the Earth, the lunar system, is a unique exception. The diameter of the moon is 3,470 kilometers. More than a quarter of the Earth. Its mass is about 1/80th that of the Earth. We ourselves regard the moon as a satellite. But to be exact, the Earth-Moon system should be called a double planet. To prove this, consider the old mass ratio in a planet. In second place is the Ganymede-Jupiter system. That's 1 in 12,800. That's a huge difference. But if Pluto, it is still considered a planet. The title of double planet still belongs to. Its mass ratio is a stunning 1 to 8.6. Between the 7th Venus and the Earth. Strange and controversial connection. Until the 1960s, there is very little information about the autobiography of Venus. You can't get any results with a telescope. A thick atmosphere envelops the planet. All surface details are hidden. The atmosphere is so dense and uniform, so that there is no reference point. Only recent radar technology, so that we can learn more. The diameter is dozens of times larger. We therefore confirm the direction of Venus' autobiography, except for Uranus and Uranus, in contrast to other major planets and dwarf planets. In astronomical terms, this rotation is called retrograde. Early studies suggest that Venus rotates once every 240 days. This makes one guess. Venus has met Earth twice. Approximately 580 days. It turns twice. This means that every time he encounters the Earth, show us the same side. But is this guess correct? After more accurate measurement, scientists have discovered Venus. It actually turns every 243.0 to 6 days. This time is a little shorter than previously thought. It's a very small difference. But if you keep this gap, when Venus meets Earth, show us the faces. It won't always be the same. And here's another interesting thing. Venus turns 3, circle 729 days. The Earth goes around the Sun exactly twice in 730 days. So it looks like Venus' rotation period and the Earth's orbital period. There is a 3:2 ratio. Is this really just a coincidence? The dance of the 6th Galilean moon. 400 years ago, astronomer Galileo Galilei announced the discovery of 4 moons orbiting Jupiter. Each one can pass through his telescope, see a clear white spot. However, It was not until the past 40 years, Astronomer, to study Jupiter's moons in detail, get to know Io, the fascinating world of Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Although they are all similar in size, it's about a quarter of the radius of the Earth. But these four satellites are different. Io intense volcanic activity. Europa is covered in ice. Ganymede has a magnetic field. Callisto is riddled with ancient craters. Also, icy Europa, considered to be in the solar system. There may be strong candidates for life, but there's just one problem. Still puzzles planetary scientists. Why Europa and Ganymede's orbit through orbital resonance connect together? Surprisingly, their orbital period, it's a 1:2:2:4 ratio, basically completed in Ganymede. One orbital time. Europa completed twice, and Io completes 4 times. It sounds incredible. We might assume a possible tidal mechanism. When the Galilean satellite formed, they don't resonate with each other. They're both on slightly smaller orbits than they are now. As time goes by, after they are formed, Io's orbit is due to the tidal action of Jupiter and slowly move outward. This coincides with our moon slowly moving away from the Earth. 3.8 centimeters per year, 1.5 inches is the same effect. The equatorial uplift of our planet. The same thing happened to Jupiter, and the bulge in Jupiter's atmosphere between Io causes the orbit of Io to increase. When the Io track expands, his years are getting longer, until he approaches a 2/1 resonance with Europa. Once they reach resonance, they're locked in. The attractive force between them strengthened him. Io still causes tides on Jupiter, but his orbit is still trying to expand. As the Io's orbit continues to expand, he gives Europa an attractive force ladder at every pass, extended their orbit, until Ganymede reaches 2/1 resonance. The orbit is still expanding, but it's much slower, because each additional one makes it harder to transfer energy. Callisto is too far, can't join this dance. But people think he may also resonate in 1.50 billion years. 5th, Pluto. From where did he release it into space? Nitrogen. Pluto is so small, so hard to understand. His gravity, how to maintain its atmosphere. We know this dwarf planet, continuously at 50 kilograms per second, losing its atmosphere. It is composed almost entirely of nitrogen. Since the New Horizons probe's leap in 2015, scientists have been thinking, why Pluto? We haven't used up all the nitrogen yet. The best assumption is some hidden geological processes. All reserves of nitrogen must be created, but the exact process remains a mystery. Scientists currently estimate that the planet has about 30 billion tons of nitrogen atmosphere and losing about 1.50 million tons a year. Basically, he only needs a few thousand to tens of thousands of years. We can lose that atmosphere. This time is actually very short in the solar system, considering that Pluto already exists for more than 4 billion years. Humans in their brief period of having an atmosphere, very unlikely to encounter this dwarf planet. But something, replenishing supply. There are 2 basic mechanisms for replenishing Pluto's atmosphere, all brought from outside, or generated from within. Comets are likely to be the main cause, because they can deposit nitrogen on impact, or penetrate the surface, to expose large amounts of frozen gas. Scientists have calculated the numbers, but even with their most conservative estimates, the most comets, deepest impact crater, anything from an alien planet, can't cover the deficit of nitrogen loss. Instead, they assumed that nitrogen gas is produced through more conventional geological activities, such as ice volcanism or tectonic activity, to supplement. But no one knows yet what's driving this geological agitation, because Pluto is too small and too old, unable to keep most of the residual energy from its formation, unable to stir its interior by facing west. It seems that something inside this dwarf planet is causing these exhalations, but the exact reason is not clear. 4th, sunsets on Mars appear blue to the human eye. Mars is known as the red planet because it's rich in iron oxides. Make this planet It appears as red as visible from the Earth. The sky on Mars is also red. Unlike the Earth is blue. However, at sunrise and sunset, the magical exchange of two colors, although sunsets on Earth are red, but Hiroshi and images of Mars rovers like Curiosity show the colors of sunrises and sunsets on Mars, obviously blue. The reason is that the atmosphere of Mars, unlike the way Earth's atmosphere scatters light, it has less gas, more dust. On Mars, red light is scattered at a larger angle than blue light. So, at sunset, as sunlight passes through a thicker atmosphere, the scattering of red light is more pronounced, therefore, only with more. How blue hues of sunlight survive. Little knowledge light scattering is less dependent on the chemical composition of the atmosphere and more dependent on the size of the particles causing the scattering. The Earth's atmosphere is composed almost entirely of small particles, mainly nitrogen and oxygen molecules. These particles are larger than the typical wavelength of visible light is much smaller. Under these circumstances, the dominant scattering phenomenon is sharp scattering. It scatters much more blue light than red light. On the other hand, the atmosphere of Mars is mainly composed of larger particles, so this is dust floating around. Due to the low gravity of the red planet, dust is abundant. When light is scattered by particles larger than its own wavelength, the dominant scattering mechanism is not Rayleigh mystery scattering. This is the opposite of Rayleigh scattering, scattering red light more than blue light. The line passes through more atmosphere at sunset, so there's more meter scattering on Mars. The red light is scattered, forming a blue rim round the solar disk, and this is what the rover has repeatedly captured. The third one is a pediatric wild satellite, one of the strangest moons in the solar system. It's an irregularly shaped Miranda. He is one of the 5 main moons of Uranus, the smallest and innermost satellite, discovered by Gerard Kuiper on February 16, 1948. He took Shakespeare's violence. Heroes in the storm are named. But, although Shakespeare's Miranda was a young, beautiful woman, it looks like it was pieced together from the pieces. This small, rugged satellite is 470 kilometers in diameter. The surface is covered with slanted and crossed plates, strange and rugged terrain, potholed plains and darkness, irregular canyon, except for a chunk of icy rock full of gullies, make the Grand Canyon look like a paper incision. Nothing warm, something warm and fuzzy. How did small satellites become like this? It's still a mystery. One theory holds that, shortly after the trip, Miranda is just as smooth ice hockey, until one or more impacts shatter it, and eventually the pieces came back together. But it's not a sphere in the traditional sense. Another hypothesis holds that meteorite impact on his surface caused local melting, rising mud. They form what scientists call coronae. Other theories, it suggests some icy volcanic activity, and by Uranus, the attractive force of its other satellites, internal heating caused by interaction, or Miranda may have started to divide. It was divided into a similar core, demon and crustal stuff, but it froze before it was done. There is no definite answer at present. The only basis, it's just Voyager 2. During the flyby on January 24, 1986, the only image captured. Second, and he's far from the other big planets. Venus should not appear as grey as the Moon. On the Moon, when the Moon is in a fine crescent phase, a region of the Moon will reflect light from the Earth and slightly bright. This phenomenon, so that observers on the Moon can see the light emitted by the Earth. Surprisingly, the same thing seems to be happening on Venus. The glow appears as a faint greenish-gray or red light, affecting the planet as the illuminated half, all or part of the ball. The first report of this phenomenon, Giovanni Riccioli, dating back to 1643. Since then, many astronomers, including the great William Herschel, all reported his existence, especially in Chiahi, or when the planet appears as a system meniscus. due to the presence of visible launches, and it seems to be confirmed. What is the possible reason for it? So far, in the shadow hemisphere, the only visible light emission that has been definitively detected is caused by the recombination of oxygen atoms in the atmosphere. It's called ash. When on the illuminated side, carbon monoxide in the upper atmosphere, dissociated by ultraviolet sunlight. Oxygen atoms are separated by approximately 60 to 70 kilometers, height of violent wind blowing, move to the shadow hemisphere, and reassemble the molecules, emitting a faint green light. On Earth, something like this happens, and make up the majority of the natural night sky brightness. Stay away from artificial light pollution sources. The observed emission, could it be caused by this mechanism? It seems unlikely, because the intensities involved vary widely. It certainly is. The emission intensity on Venus is much higher than on Earth, and we see significant spikes. But all measurements show the brightness level is much lower than the level reported by observers. Does the launch sometimes get stronger? Zhejiang explanation. Why does the glow seem to vary in intensity and not always observable? But this possibility, although based on known and studied mechanisms, doesn't seem reasonable. Another explanation may be more controversial, because he's based on data that's still being studied in depth. Considering the presence of lightning in Venus' turbulent atmosphere, early detectors, such as Venera in Russia and Payne in the United States, electrical activity associated with lightning has been detected, but the optical images are contradictory. Only in one case have evidence of flashes caused by them. In 1998-99, Cassini probe instruments during a planetary flyby. This activity has not been confirmed. In 2007, Europe, the arrival of the Venus Express probe and new research finally confirmed the existence of lightning in the atmosphere of Venus. The altitude is about 50 to 60 kilometers. These are usually more intense than electrical discharges on Earth. Between the sulfuric acid clouds does not discharge to the ground. Their density is about 100 times per second. Events seem to be compatible. It can be proved that it has not been photographed. The faint glow of the bright hemisphere observation track. This second hypothesis, it currently appears to be a visible launch with the observation track, the most consistent, but a real bong, and consistent observations by multiple observers over time. Not found yet. The first solar system was more than 4 light-years wide, or 150,000 times the distance from the Earth to the Sun. Our solar system contains planets, asteroid comet, dwarf planets, and other trillions of objects. They all orbit the Sun. But it's unbelievable. All of these things, just a small part of the inner solar system. Thanks to Voyager probes, we know that outside the Coburn Belt, around 80 to 200 astronomical units, there's a region called the Middle Finger Seismic Wave. This is where the solar peak collides with the interstellar ring, star ring by star peak, shaped into a teardrop shape called a circular astrolabe. If we could observe the solar system from the outside, you will see this shape. But the true size of the solar system is determined by its attractive force and the distance at which objects still feel the attractive force of the Sun. In the farthest reaches of the solar system is the Oort cloud. This is a hypothetical cloud of icy objects. They could be 100,000 astronomical units away from the Sun, or 1.87 light-years away, orbiting the Sun. Although we cannot see the Oort cloud directly, but people think, occasionally fall into the long-period coma of the inner solar system. Stars come from this region, so we can say with certainty, the influence of the Sun. It even affects the distance from us, a neighbor galaxy for light-years away, Alpha Coefficient Centaurus. It is now widely believed that, between two stars, there is a constant exchange of objects and matter, like the mysterious Oumuamua, possibly originated from Centauri. These assumptions, it certainly offers us a glimpse into the possibilities of life from a star, a fascinating scene that easily spreads to another star. The universe is big. Life is bigger. Good night, everyone.